What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you another look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my trusty co-host, Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how you holding up over there?
We're holding, dog. We're holding. Excited to jump into the greatest rapper alive, the greatest writer of the 21st century, CyHi the Prince.
Yeah, he tweeted last week that he's dropping, I think, a few EPs, right, in the coming weeks. Got a few things coming out.
We got this EP, and he says an album of the same name is coming soon. So he says, CyHi back again.
And proclaimed himself to be the greatest rapper alive, which was a surprise to me. But maybe he'll surprise me. We're going to be talking about him in just a second, as well as a few other artists and a couple TV shows that started and wrapped up. So hit that subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod and a 5-star rating on Spotify, which actually I haven't even seen that on Spotify. They might have taken that feature away. I don't know.
I don't update my apps, so perhaps they did take it away. Last I checked, it was still there.
Well, if you can give a 5-star, you should do that. But yeah, why don't we jump in to CyHi the Prince, who dropped EGOT, the EP, this past week. And CyHi, you know, I guess is an artist that we're aware of pretty much as a Kanye art, like in the Kanye circle, right? But not someone that we really talk about a lot. I think his last like real album was 5 years ago. So not doing a lot of his own stuff, but seems to be kind of stepping into the limelight here. What'd you think of EGOT the EP? Did it impress you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I was necessarily impressed, but I wasn't disappointed either. That debut album you referenced, No Dope on Sundays, the long-awaited debut album from CyHi back in 2017, kind of the same feeling. It's like, yeah, a lot of the trademarks of his rapping ability when you've heard him has been, yeah, this guy's a really technical guy, punchline heavy, pretty witty, old school rapper. Not too bad. I mean, most people, I think, most famously know him from his few like true features on Kanye projects. So Appalled on Dark Twisted Fantasy, and then probably less famously The Morning on Cruel Summer. Those are like, and then he was on some of the Good Friday songs as well, like Christmas in Harlem. But I mean, it's not like he was super well known for his huge mixtape around the 2010s. And I think curiosity more than anything else was what drove interest in that debut album back when it came out several years ago. And that's honestly where I'm at again with this EGOT EP and his EGOT album he says is coming out this year. It's just curiosity just to see what is it going to be, because I think his abilities and his collaborations towards others, namely Kanye, speak for themselves and suggest a high standard. But and CyHi, I think, is kind of a bit more than just like someone's ghostwriter or someone's writer who also does their own thing. You know, like he's clearly not Partisan Fontaine. He's not Quentin Miller. He's still a viable artist. I mean, he did have like 7 mixtapes before that album, but it just never really happened for him due to various reasons, including label troubles. But nonetheless, I still think it's pretty solid offering, this 4-track EP. But by the nature of its existence, it's short and sweet.
You know, you say short, but when you hear 4 songs, you think maybe it'd be like 10 minutes, 12 minutes, something like that. No, we get full tracks here. This almost feels a bit like a throwback in a sense. I think that makes sense for, how long CyHi's been in the game and the era that he comes from. These are fully formed songs, and I actually liked probably 3 of the 4 of them. I think the first 2, Extra and Help Me God, were the clear standouts. Slide I also liked. Tears I was ready to skip through by the end. But overall, I think if we're getting 3 of the 4 really standing out on an EP, that's a good first showing for wetting the whistle for the album to come. Did you have the same feeling?
I did, exactly. I think that's a great way to put it. For me, the biggest highlight of them all would be Help Me God, which has, I think, really awesome production featuring this consistent background choiry vocals. But the bars themselves from CyHi, which is why people listen to him, just super punchline heavy, lots of references. It's just really fun. The Black Kennedy, Jackie O, Grassy Knoll line stood out to me. I also at least made my ears perk up. I don't know if it makes sense, but he talked about Jesus dying at 33, but he's not
Yeah, the
dead,
Nipsey
so
line.
is Nipsey Hussle still alive? I was like, all right, sure.
Yeah, it
But
made me like kind of just look off in the distance, like what? Like, but it at least caught my attention for sure.
yeah, and I think just in general, it's a good encapsulation of like what kind of rapper he is. Like if you remember, after Life of Pablo came out, it must have been over a year after it came out. CyHi put out a video of him in his car driving, rapping along to his demo verse of Father Stretch My Hands Part 1. And you
Yes.
listen to that verse and you're like, maybe that was just a demo or reference. But you know what? It makes sense why it wasn't on Life of Pablo, because CyHi would have waxed Kanye with those bars. Like it was dense lyrical shit, and
Yeah.
it sounded awesome on that very famous popular beat that we all know. That's the kind of guy he is. So I really hope that album is coming soon, because I would love him to get more flowers as a performer himself, because he's so talented.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that this at least made me excited to get his next album, which hopefully we'll get very soon. And we'll be adding "Help Me God" to our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist, so check that out on Spotify. But why don't we keep it moving forward to another artist connected to Kanye, Vory, who just dropped his third full length album project, Lost Souls. I don't know if this is I
Debut
don't know if
album,
this is
yes.
debut album, I guess,
Everything else was a tape.
um, Lost Souls. Last time we heard Vory, at least last time I think we talked about him on the podcast, would have been on Donda. And as someone that has had a few tapes in the past, kind of just came up through Donda. Obviously, I think we were excited to see what he could bring. I also think his showings on some of the Donda songs really stood out. Like I thought,
God
No Child
Breathed
Left Behind,
and No Child
God
Left
Breathed.
Behind. Yep.
I think he also might have contributed to one other, but maybe
He
Jonah.
he was on Donda 2 on that song Lord Lift Me Up, which is really just a solo Vory track on the Donda 2 we heard, a few months ago.
Donda 2, an album I do not ever want to go back to. But yeah, good for Vory getting on that. Did you feel like Lost Souls is like going to be a breakout project for him?
Yeah, I think that's the key question here. And it's funny, I actually was not aware of this when Donda came out, but Vory, you would be forgiven if you thought Vory, new good music signee in the orbit of Kanye, following the footsteps of many other people that worked with him and signed to him. No, Vory's actually signed to Meek Mill. He signed the Dream Chasers. Curveball there. Anyway, I honestly like this a lot more than I thought I would. It's a long record. It's too long. It's got bloat in it. Just get that out of the way. But I do think Vory's performances, his voice as like a guy in the male R&B / melodic hip hop lane, I actually like really enjoy his voice, and I think he stands out more than say someone on this alongside him like Young Blue. I think he's a bit more interesting than some of his contemporaries along these lines. So there was more songs that I really enjoyed than I expected to, because I also wasn't super blown away by his Donda stuff, to be honest. I know some people were. He was definitely a name people were remembering from Donda, but I wasn't necessarily wowed by him. But in terms of like the male R&B stuff that we get these days, I actually thought there was some cool stuff here. So not a perfect album, but I did like more than I thought I would.
It's it's definitely like a first album. I think that, like you said, there's a lot of bloat on here. I definitely found myself just feeling kind of bored at times. I don't. I think by the end, there's not a ton of variation. Actually, it's like a second or third song near the end. Might be Project Baby that comes right after this interlude that really lulls you to sleep. That's just like such a welcome shot of energy to it, because I feel like a lot of this feels a bit sleepy at times. But I definitely think there's some positive takeaways here for Vory, and I expect this to propel him to get more opportunities and to probably put out some better stuff in the future. So I guess I'll say it wasn't my favorite, and also that listening to CyHi right after, I just was like, oh, this is someone who's been in the game a long time versus someone who's rather new and kind of still finding their voice. A funny juxtaposition, I would say, but I think there's definitely some good takeaways. So tell me what you liked about it, because you said you were a little impressed.
Yeah. So I think it's just a few songs, really. I don't think there's anything to really write home about with the sequence here. And again, it's a long album, but just if you take away a few of these songs, I think track one, "Lost Souls," stands out. "Mind Games" as well. Just I think just like the performance that Vory brings, he comes across as like very charismatic. Honestly, I really enjoy that. I think it fits well with pretty traditional trap beat production, but I think it sounds pretty nice. "Do Not Disturb" in particular, which I believe was the first or second single, the catchiness of the Vory hook, I think really stands out. And I kind of think kind of showcases why like we're seeing him pop up on new features, like he was on the 5EO record. I would not be shocked that a Vory hook, a Vory chorus, is a more common in the future for that reason, just because it just has a catchiness to it. And then, kind of unexpectedly, I didn't think I would be in this position, but Nav like kind of spazzed on "Do Not Disturb." I'm not a Nav guy at all, but I'm barely 30, but I made a mill 30 times. I was like, oh damn, Nav's showing out over here. How about that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think "Do Not Disturb" was one of the highlights. I also liked "Mind Games," like you said, and yeah, "Project Baby" near the end really
Mhm.
stood out. I think the production of it just is so different than pretty much everything else you get. Those horns come in, and it really just perks up. And I think that he's doing a little bit more rapping than like the melodic
Yes.
singingness on it, and that really stands out too. The energy is just needed in this. So yeah, I think you said it well. He has really good performances on this. I just think this probably could have been a 25-minute album rather than 48. So,
Mhm.
any other thoughts? Or are you ready to move off Vory onto another Kanye protege, or at least someone in his sphere? 070 Shake, who dropped "You Can't Kill Me," her second album, following up Modus Vivendi from 2020, an album that we both really liked and were impressed
Mhm.
by. I think it felt like Shake is so singular, obviously comes on the scene off of those recordings in Wyoming. Uh,
Mhm. Ghost
uh,
Town.
yeah, Ghost Town. Her vocals in that are so haunting and just really steal the show. And you got a couple of, I think, really memorable tracks off Moses Vivendi. So I think the question becomes, "You Can't Kill Me." Does this keep that upward propulsion for Shake, or did this feel a bit like a step back for you?
I definitely didn't like it as much as Modus Vivendi. That's for darn sure. I just didn't find this one nearly as interesting. It's not for a
Mm,
lack of trying. I think Shake's performance and what she does to her voice with autotune and variations of production, that's all still here, but I just don't know if the songs themselves really came together in the same way as they did in Modus Vivendi. Like Modus Vivendi with Guilty Conscience and The Pines, there was some catchy stuff on there that was still reminiscent of Ghost Town, but just made you want to listen to it again. I don't know if I don't think I really loved any songs on here. There's some songs that are good and interesting, but uh, just wasn't really what I was looking for, which is a bit disappointing because again, I love the first album so much.
yeah, I think I had a similar takeaway. Although I think there is like a nice stretch in the middle of some really memorable songs. Especially "Skin and Bones" is probably the standout track to me. The hook on that is so catchy, and this is pretty much all Shake. She only really has one credited guest on this, Christine
Mhm.
and the Queens, on another song that I thought was pretty good. At least the production on it was really interesting, and I thought probably a track I want to go back and listen to a few more times, "Body." But yeah, it's interesting because I think about how high a song like Guilty Conscience just feels like it soars, and it just feels like it like takes you into this like new space, and this just felt very much kind of like down the middle in terms of energy, and I just did not expect to get that from a Shake album, and so I similarly was left feeling a little bit disappointed, but overall I still think there's a few songs that are worthy of acknowledging. Did any stand out to you?
I'm with you on Skin and Bones, which I believe is one of the singles, first few
Yeah.
singles. That the way that song builds in
Mm-hmm.
general and her performance builds on top of it, really, really cool. Uh, I mean, yeah. Then there's some like I just have like some notes like "Come Back Home." The synths on that I felt were really nice, and also particularly like the use of autotune as heavily as it's used on that one from Shake. I think really works. She's an artist that uses autotune and voice modulation very consistently, but also at different levels. So it is a bit noticeable when it's like super autotune heavy, almost like Daft Punk reminiscent or something.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. And then Vibrations is one where it's like I don't know if her lyrics were necessarily wowing me, but there's just some like wild synth production on that song, so it's at least interesting to listen to. And it turns out this whole album was mixed and mastered by Mike Dean, who was
Hmm.
a good music release at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. I think you highlighted a couple. On Come Back Home, that like piano start, and then the like dun 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 dun, the like strings that come in there. It feels almost like James Bond, like like she was going for her James Bond theme song type move here. But yeah, then those synths come in. And it's like a really interesting move and really switches the song up. I think that my favorite run of songs in the middle is probably from Skin and Bones through Cocoon. um, Blue Velvet has like a really interesting like drum beat to it. It almost kind of reminds me of LCD Sound System. The I'm forgetting the name of the track at the moment. I'm gonna look it up, but from their most recent album, American Dream, where it's just like the whole first like 3 minutes of the song are just the drums kind of like tuned out, and it really just kind of steals it. How Do You Sleep was the name of the track, so that one really stood out to me. And then Cocoon, I thought was another highlight from the album, but overall, I mean, that like stretch in the middle was nice, but everything in the beginning, like Web and Invited and History, I guess History wasn't too bad. I think there's a good vocal performance from Shake there, but it just didn't catch me the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, just kind of makes me wonder if Shake is going to kind of continue to explore this realm. If she feels like such a wild card, like it's hard to like pinpoint what's next for her, but I just don't. I think I want something a little bit more like upbeat from her. I'm not sure exactly how to frame exactly what I'm looking for, but um, still very talented. And apparently she's partners with Kalani, which I was not aware of. So
Seems to be a new development, but good for them. I support their relationship and their love.
I would love to hear them do a song together. I would fully support that. So, and I also support their relationship. They seem like a cool celebrity duo. So we're gonna add a track from Shake to our Nostalgia Best of playlist. But let's keep moving to Post Malone, 12 Carat Toothache, the newest track from pop mega superstar Post Malone. Man, when Post Malone first like started, if you had told me this is like what he was going to become, how big he's going to become, I would have called you a liar. I can't believe this guy is this famous.
When you heard White Iverson, you weren't thinking that guy would release an album that was the 7th best-selling album of 2019 and also the 6th best-selling album of 2020. You didn't think that when you listened to White Iverson?
I can't imagine anyone did, right? I mean, he is just an absolute, like I said, megastar. And
it's crazy.
I think there's a lot to like about him in terms of his like persona. It's like he seems like a really likable guy and like just kind of fun, and he seems kind of like himself.
He's
and
just
so I
someone
support
you want to
that.
have a beer with.
Yeah,
I'd vote for him.
I was
That's
gonna say
kind of the vibe, right?
it definitely is. Like he's the kind of guy that if he walked into your party, you would like look at him at first and be like, "Oh, what's up with this guy?" And then he would like crack a beer and do something funny, and you'd be like, "Oh, okay, this guy's pretty cool. Like I'm down with that." But does he make good music, Dave? Does Post Malone make good music? And that laugh tells me that you probably don't think so.
Well, as you said, he makes popular music. Hollywood's Bleeding, the last record, came out in fall 2019. Had the pleasure of listening to that album in Budapest. Yeah, it was definitely made for an interesting stroll. But somehow, against all odds, he's just so popular. Like, he's tied with Bieber for having the most songs in the top 100 most streamed songs on Spotify, with 6 apiece. Crazy. Rockstar, the number 4 most streamed song on Spotify, over 2 billion streams. Like, he's just
Sunflower, only 100 million streams behind it.
Insane. Yeah, Sunflower's number 7. He's the only one with 2 in the top 10. And Circles, which was the big track from Hollywood's Bleeding, which got a Record and Song of the Year nomination, is like number 30. Like, he just has done some huge numbers. He's such a huge radio presence, such a huge playlist presence. And yet, I've been consistent with this because we've reviewed his last 2 records. I really don't think there's a whole lot going on with Post Malone's music. And to a lot of people, that's the appeal. They love this shit, you know? But to me, I'm just very rarely impressed. And I feel like he goes in a deeper route sometimes and just never lands. When he does the more lighter fare, like Congratulations with Quavo, or Wow, you know, which is basically a rap song. Like, I like that stuff. That stuff's fun. But I'm not a Circles guy. Like, I'm just kind of tired of Post Malone telling me how sad he is, because he just can't tell me in a way he hasn't already told me. Like, we're really running on fumes with this shit, I feel like. However, I'd say 12 Carat Toothache at least is a bit more interesting and inviting on the production side of things, even if Post Malone himself, I think, is still kind of doing what he's always been doing. Or at least he's been doing the last few years, which is a complete pivot towards pop music and completely departing hip-hop for good.
Yeah. It's funny because I just did not find myself really digging a lot of this. I agree. I think when he goes lighter, I definitely find it more palatable, something I can kind of just vibe with. But there's a lot of times when I just really can't get into it, and you know, it's hard. A lot of these songs, like Cooped Up with Roddy Ricch, is one of the standouts from this. I think might have been a single, and
it was, yeah.
It just does not. It's hard for me to like really sit with this and be like, oh, these are super relatable lyrics. Like, you know, I'm listening to a guy who, like you said, is just so like, he just makes music people, I guess, want to play over and over again. Has a lot of money, doing really well for himself. Is, you know, he's kind of he's had a couple of times where he's in movies and like guest appearances and stuff. So like, he is just an absolute star, and he's talking about like, oh, I'm gonna burn it all down and start, you know, build up this lemon tree again, because you know, I got the shit end of the stick in life. It's like, it's really hard to like really like relate to that, bro, because like, you know, there's a lot of people who are a lot worse off than this. So yeah, that like beginning, like Reputation, Cooped Up, Lemon Tree, was like really tough for me. It gets a little bit better once you get a couple of the features, like Doja coming in, I think is like a breath of fresh air to this album.
She's just so damn good right now, dude. What a great feature.
She's on a heater. She's absolutely unbelievable. I'm trying to think. He does a song with Fleet Foxes, which is just like super unexpected, and I don't know why Fleet Foxes did this.
The cash, brother.
I guess. Like, they just never struck me as that kind of band either. Right. But then another standout was the feature from The Weeknd on One Right Now. I mean, also another artist who every time he jumps on a track at the moment, it just crushes it. So,
funny enough, the One Right Now with The Weeknd came out last fall, I think it was. Yeah. It's been out several months, and it wasn't actually as big a hit as probably people would have expected. I actually think it's pretty solid because it feels a bit more like what The Weeknd's been up to than what Post Malone's been up to, and to me, that's more appealing. But I guess to Post Malone's fans, that wasn't more appealing. I don't know what to say. Yeah, I'm just really tired of the sad shit, honestly. And like, clearly, when you have a song like Circles get absolutely rapidly consumed for 2 years almost, and get Grammy nominations, like, sure, you're gonna keep sticking to that lane. But it's just weird for me because he says that like the pandemic and being cooped up, you know, was like the focus of this record, and he made this record in Malibu. But it's like, I don't know, man. Like, you were also hella sad on Hollywood's Bleeding, which you made before the pandemic. So like, what the fuck changed? I don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, he seems to be so having such a good time, and he has all these famous friends that love being around him, and I'm sure he is a great time. He's really fun, and yet he couldn't be anything farther from it, as you said, when it comes to his actual music, and
Yeah.
it's just very strange.
Yeah. It's funny. One of my favorite like songs from him. I guess I like the ones that, like I said, you can just vibe to. I like his cover of "Only Wanna Be with You" they did for Pokemon. Was it Pokemon 25?
Yeah.
And I think that that's actually like a fun performance. He adds like his own twist to the song and sound, and he kind of fits that like Hootie and the Blowfish type vibe pretty well.
Mm.
And like he could totally just be kind of making music similar to that. I mean, obviously Hootie is country, but if you put the like pop auto tune spin to it, you can be making these upbeat songs that just are catchy and fun and like bubblegum. But he really wants to go for this like introspective stuff, and I just don't know if he does it super well or in a way that really makes sense. But
Right.
I think when he gets a collaborator, he actually gives better performances. Like I think on that song with Doja, I think he actually sounds a little bit better to me on that, probably because he's opposite Doja and has to bring it a little bit more. You
Right,
know?
and also that's a trap beat, and
Yeah.
that's a song about him stealing someone's girl, and
Right.
Doja playing off that. So it's just lighter and more fun by default.
Mhm.
I mean, Louis Bell is all over this, producing and co-writing. That's been his signature collaborator for several albums now, and Louis Bell largely became a super producer and on in-demand producer on the back of his work with Post Malone. So he's working with the same people, but I would say that on a song like I Cannot Be with Gunna, that's an example of, I think, Louis Bell kind of elevating a song where Post Malone's kind of just doing his thing like he
Mhm.
always does, but the beat itself is just a bit more inviting, and the
Totally.
Gunna feature fits it really well, Free Gunna, where I think if he was working with someone else, it probably would have just sounded like a boring ass Post Malone song. But I think that's what I said before in the beginning. I think Louis Bell, even though he's always been there, he seems like a bit of the saving grace on this record where I liked listening to this one more than Hollywood's Bleeding. Not that I like either album, but like I just think the production, at least in fits and starts, there's just at least some more interesting things going on. Like on Lemon Tree, like yeah, Post Malone throwing in like country twang like out of left field all of a sudden, but I don't know, it kind of fits because of the production.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. I don't really have a lot more to say about this, only because like listening to it, I just kind of had like this sounds a lot like what we've heard. Um, and I think this is just kind of the lane that he wants to stay in for now. It's been very profitable for him and
Mm.
it's worked, but I do hope that we get some more fun tracks from him moving forward.
Yeah, something to watch too. If you check the Spotify Top 50 US chart or the global chart as well, you'll see that Post Malone isn't like dominating the top 20 spots the way like Harry
Hmm.
Styles was or Bad Bunny was.
Yep.
It's still Harry and Bad Bunny largely, right? So I'm curious to see just how popular this album will be. Like, we're going to see the first week sales go down because last time around the old bundling rules inflated the total.
Hmm.
I'm sure the Doja song will be a huge hit, but I'm curious to see what other songs are a huge hit too. Because as we said, the Weekend song did not blow up to the extent you would have expected after the way Hollywood's Bleeding went. So I'm just a bit curious to see how things go, or maybe there's a bit of people wanting something else. Who can say? So something to watch.
Well, drop us your thoughts on Post Malone and check out our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist. We're going to talk about Hacks now, which just wrapped up its second season on HBO. And man, what a delight this show just continues to be. It's probably one of the best functioning, best run, and best written comedies out there right now. Not that that's saying a lot for the state of comedies, but I think there's something to be said about a 30-minute show that just is as tight and well thought out and heartfelt as this show. And I think really kind of keeps you on edge, teetering between like in their relationship, the will they won't they of their like actually like true feelings towards each other. So I loved the second season. I'm assuming you did as well, because I think this show is kind of hard to deny at this point.
Yes, I liked it a lot, and I also really appreciated that the creators, was it Lucia Aniello, Paul W. Downs, and Jen Statsky,
Mhm.
they were not afraid to change up what Hacks does and how Hacks works as a show. It might seem simple, but they really kind of switched up the whole energy of the show by sending Deborah and Ava on the road, leaving Vegas behind, separating them from the other characters in the ensemble, but really just kind of adding new dynamics and a new framing device to this Deborah Ava relationship. I thought that was a really nice change to like kind of get ahead of perhaps something getting stale. They just didn't run it back, which I thought was really nice. And I think the emotional and comedic stakes that have been built up from the start of season one just continue to get enriched. And I think it's a really great show. It's not the funniest show on TV, but it is a really funny show. And
Yeah.
I think Jean Smart as Deborah is very credible and believable as like a famous legendary comedian. You know, like I think everything really works, and there's like I feel like there's just so much buy-in from the cast, but also like from the audience. Like when you watch the show, like everything just works and makes sense, and it's just a real fun hang. And it's also only 4 hours the whole season. Like it doesn't overstay its welcome either.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I loved going on the road and then kind of coming back for the end of the season. But I think what that highlighted more than anything, and what this season did so well that I didn't fully expect, they kind of danced around this aspect in season one at times, is Deborah as a mother, and like how like her mothering nurturing side kind of comes out, even though she still has this very hardened self-centered aspect to her. And uh, I really loved when Marcus, who's kind of sidelined in the first couple of episodes, only kind of popping in to see his spiral in a sense, as he's dealing with a breakup, dealing with Deborah not being in LA, and so he wasn't picked to be the road manager, and kind of looking at like, what is my role right now, like who do I need to be there for? And that moment when Deborah like asks him to like come on the road with her, you kind of like see that like softer side of Deborah. And I think that's like, those were the moments that really stood out to me this season, when Ava's dad's ashes get thrown out by that crazy road manager who was
Yeah.
just like a,
Lori Metcalf.
yeah,
Lead.
what an amazing couple episode run for her in this. But I just really like was living for those like softer moments that I think are sprinkled together with Deborah being just ridiculous, and this like, self-centered hardened LA comedian who loves to litigate and is going to take you for everything you're worth, and is going to forgive you but isn't going to not sue you. And it's just like a really
Right.
fun juxtaposition of the character, I think.
Totally. Yeah. When Marcus gets to go on the bus, I think you just have one of the best quick scenes of the whole series where they're playing charades
Yeah.
and Marcus and Deborah just absolutely destroy because or not charades, whatever they're
they,
playing.
they called it like famous or something like that.
Right. Where
Or
like just because
celebrity. That's what it
yeah,
was.
they just have such a bond and history together that Marcus can give these very specific hints that only Deborah would get, and they just get every question right. It's really funny. Uh, yeah, I think that's like if there's a criticism of the series, it's just that this season when everyone goes on the road and people get left behind, that means like Marcus's like subplot. It's like not like it's just not as compelling, I think, as Deborah
Mhm.
and Ava. I think for me because I just like have so much confidence in Marcus as a character, like bouncing back because he's like such a successful, put together man.
Yeah, so competent.
Like I know it's gonna work out. That I'm like, all right, let's just get past this because it's gonna work out, you know.
Yeah.
Um, how do you feel about I think the other key like subplot away from the road, which would be Jimmy, Paul W. Downs, of course, the agent of Ava and Deborah, and his on again, off again professional relationship with Kayla, the oblivious, incompetent assistant who is also the daughter of Jimmy's boss.
Kayla, played by Megan Stelter, is my favorite like funny aspect of the show. Her ridiculousness is just like, always just laugh out loud funny to me. And I love their back and forth. Paul W. Downs plays the straight man so well with her, and really just allows her to be so ridiculous. But I actually really liked Jimmy's whole arc in this season. Kind of
Mm.
exploring this like uh, culture among agents in Hollywood, and how he feels like he doesn't fit into this, and he takes a stand. And it kind of goes from him having to like trying to take a stand against Kayla during the season to like befriending her, or at least finding some like working relationship with her, and Kayla also kind of playing ball with him a little bit, to them be like teaming up by the end, which I thought was a really fun development. And I didn't check to see if we're getting a Hack season 3. I assume they're going to re up this, but
Not yet
I
renewed
haven't.
at this time. Certainly rooting for it. Given that new management is at the head of Warner Discovery now,
Hmm.
perhaps it's a bit less clear than it would have been if this was last year. But I'd have to think that the show isn't like super expensive, and it won a writing Emmy
Yeah.
last year, and a smart one as well. So Emmy love helps propel renewal. So you have to imagine season 3 is coming back. But I would very much anticipate it too, because I think we're in an awesome place, as you said, kind of bringing all the characters together. Jimmy and Kayla brought directly into the fold with Deborah in terms of their business. I thought Ming Na Wen was very enjoyable as a rival
Yeah.
agent, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think too, like there's just like fun little set pieces that just like really work. Like I thought, like when they go to the UFC fight in the beginning, that's really
Hmm.
great. Episode 4, when they're on the gay cruise, but it's
Yes.
not what Deborah thinks. It's a lesbian cruise, and I think that's a great example of the show's writing strengths, where I think there's a really meaningful but realistic conversation between two very different people about like sexuality. When Ava and Deborah kind of talk about that. Not super long, not super serious on Deborah's point of view either, but it's like it feels like a real conversation too. And I mean, of course, and there's also tons of room for great comedy. And I think when you watch Deborah really bomb when she does the set on the cruise, and it's like the cringiest thing ever for how she's why she's bombing. It's like, yeah, I think everything's just like super well conceived, and then like the ups and downs, I think you just really buy into it. And like Ava is constantly having ups and downs, but Hannah Einbinder does such a good job of holding her own against a television legend like Gene Smart, that it's just a really tight show. I'd be very curious to see what the potential change up for season 3 would be, because season 2 we went on the road, and now we have the characters closer together, but it seems like Deborah and Ava are truly going to be apart at the start of a
Hmm.
season 3, right? So what kind of new dynamic does that entail? Fun to think about.
Yeah. I definitely hope we get another season, because I would love to see how they bring them back together eventually. You know,
Right.
I could see something where the show Ava's working on, maybe Deborah ends up doing like a guest spot for, or something like that, or something along those lines. But I just really love their relationship, and I think that's probably kind of going back to my point at the beginning. The way that Einbinder and Smart just make these characters feel so real. You talked about the ups and downs that they have, and their working dynamic on screen is just really uh, emotional. Like at the end when uh, Deborah tells Ava that she has to, she's firing her, she has to move on to her own thing, kind of spread her own wings. I really like felt sad that they weren't going to be together, and I think Einbinder plays that really well, especially after you see in the episode before the difficulties in the relationship with her own mom. So it's a really wonderful show. It operates on so many different levels, really, really well, and you do get these like fun guest spots from time to time that really like stand out and just make it really, really a pleasure. So if you haven't checked out Hacks, if you aren't up on it, like Dave said, it's an 8 hour commitment at this point. And you can really, I think, get a lot out of it. So, hoping
Mhm.
for a season 3.
Real quick, I just say I really enjoyed Martha Kelly as the HR person with Jimmy. We just saw her in Euphoria. Just great casting, really funny. And also on the bus, I thought Kiki had one of the best moments of comedy where uh, I forget which character asks her if she likes Memphis music because they're going to Memphis. And they're like, "Oh, Elvis," and she's like, "No." Young Dolph, NLE Choppa, 3 6 Mafia, and just lists all the Memphis rappers. I thought that was funny writing, funny joke. But yeah, definitely watch Axe. It's really good.
Let's move on to Under the Banner of Heaven, which we talked about the premiere a few weeks back. Now we got the full season. Andrew Garfield starring in this John Krakauer adaptation. And after seeing all 7 episodes, Dave, do you feel like this show lived up to the hype with Garfield at the helm? I mean, I feel like I was pretty excited for this.
Yeah, I think it did. I quite enjoyed the series. It's not the funnest hang at times, but I think we knew that going in. When you watch a show that opens with the grisly murder of a young mother and newborn child, like I thought that was pretty obvious, right? This isn't going to be super fun. Who done it? Mystery solver. It's not like that. I think it's a really intelligent miniseries, though. And I haven't read the Krakauer book, but his reputation precedes it itself, and it's a really, I think, intelligent examination of a very specific world, which would be the very insular community and yet problematic community that is the Mormon faith, and the proximity that traditional Church of Latter-day Saints members have to more fundamentalist Mormons. And it's been very interesting, I think, to read a lot of thoughts and opinions that people that are in or used to be in those worlds themselves have shared about watching the show, and the things that they thought the show did very well and how close to home it might be hitting. I think, like, culturally, I think it's very interesting in that regard. But just as a mini series, as a true crime in a sense miniseries, I think it's also just very compelling. It's not necessarily surprising. I don't think. I think you can kind of see where it's going, but it's well acted and looks amazing. So tough to poke any holes in it. I thought of Garfield, as we said in the beginning, very well cast as someone who's going to be having a crisis of personal faith while going through this professional journey. Like, Garfield definitely lived up to it, and of course, Gil Birmingham is such an awesome foil for him to play off of, as they play 2 very different characters.
Yeah, I agree. I really love their dynamic. And Garfield, for as much as as I guess I'll speak for myself. I love to see him doing like the goofy stuff sometimes, getting to be outlandish. It's wonderful to see him back as being Peter Parker and being a little bit more lighthearted. He really can play this heavy, like contemplative character so well, and like I can't believe this man doesn't have like more like stress lines in his forehead, because he was stressed throughout this thing, man. Like the whole time, just trying to figure out this murder, dealing with all the different dynamics from this like crazy fundamentalist family and all the brothers there, to the higher ups in the LDS church who were pressuring him, and then obviously the political aspect with the police and the mayor and all that. It was just really, I think, really well done, and weaved together really well. And I think there's a lot of really strong performances in this, from some well-established actors as well as some up-and-coming actors. I think one of the criticisms I would have that they did better with as the season went on, we talked about this in the preview, was going back to the like older religious history.
Joseph Smith,
story.
Brigham Young flashbacks, like the history and genesis of Mormons, basically.
Yeah, that didn't really work for me throughout the series. I think they could have just kind of talked about it like the way that they do more and more as the season goes on. There's less and less flashbacks, but that was probably the one thing that I just did not jive with very much and I actually found it a bit confusing at times as well. So that would be my one criticism. But I think everything else worked pretty well. Any performances that really stood out to you besides Garfield?
Yeah, and we talked about this in the beginning, and I think his best moments are in the beginning. But Alan Lafferty, performed by Billy Howley, really stood out to me amongst a cast of a lot of big names, just because I was just really struck with his performance, and it reminded me a lot of Michael Shannon in a really good way. I enjoyed him. You get less of Billy Howley towards the end as Pyrie and Taba, you know, go on their journey to solve this crime. And
Hmm.
Alan's just kind of in the cell for the most part, But I thought his present day scenes, I thought Hallie's performance was really good. Um, but then Wyatt Russell, who I think everyone likes and has been well regarded for some time, yeah, he was really well cast as fucking zealot fanatic type. It's very believable.
Yeah.
Um, how'd you feel about Sam Worthington as Ron Lafferty, who we haven't seen him in like super significant, noteworthy roles in a little bit now, but uh, going up against someone like Wyatt Russell and Garfield and Daisy Edgar Jones and Gil Birmingham, definitely, I think, more celebrated actors these days. How'd you feel about Worthington?
Well, Worthington's been on the mind a little bit before this with Avatar coming back, so I was like, huh,
Mm,
it's nice to see him getting
Jake
another
Sully.
look here. Yes. Um, I think he plays it pretty well. It's hard because I think he is playing this kind of like more calculated person that comes unraveled the more and more that you see, and obviously I think all the
Mm,
brothers become a little bit more unraveled. But Wyatt Russell, pretty much from like episode 2, you can tell is like a little bit off, and
yeah.
Rory Culkin.
Oh yeah.
Uh, just kind of goes off the hinges pretty quickly as soon as Wyatt Russell goes down that path as well. And so you see some of these people kind of just getting to go absolutely ham on screen. But Worthington being a little bit more removed, kind of the scorned brother, having a wife who maybe feels a little bit separated from the full on craziness of the family, at least in the beginning of the story. He's a little bit more down the middle, and obviously then you get like the scene in the jail where after Wyatt Russell gets arrested, and he manipulates him into taking on the head of the family role and picking up the cross or however they put it, and that's when you kind of start to see like that crazy look in his eyes. I think Worthington plays that turn pretty well.
Mhm.
Did you like his performance though?
Yeah, I think they put in the time to set up Ron's turn,
Mhm.
that it's believable and that it makes sense. I think if it was a bit more rushed, I think it might have been a bit abrasive, and uh, uh, Worthington's maybe lack of nuance as a performer at times might have been exposed a little bit more. But he fit in well. I think him when he still has all his marbles in the flashback scenes when like the family's all happy and things are going good. It's like really convincing as the put together older brother, the most successful of the bunch. All that works. I also thought like in a recurring role, Christopher Heyerdahl as the patriarch Lafferty, Eamon, it's like really really good as this completely fucked up sexist man. Um,
Yeah.
but in general, I think, and you mentioned Rory Culkin as well, and I think nice supporting role. Um, this whole Lafferty group, which is I think this you have to really buy in, and this has to like work. I think for the series to work, because uh, at the end of the day, you're portraying like these zealots, these really fucked up, delusional people that is your window into this really messed up world. And if those performances are like hokey or caricatures or something, then the show's message just won't hit with as much sincerity and seriousness as it should. But thankfully, these performances were up to snuff, so it all works. Um, and they do a really good job too with the writing. I think of
Yeah.
Taba's role in this as a native man, a non-Mormon man, and just how he fits in and around these characters, and also exposing some blatant racism from some of these characters too, and that was common in this world. Like, I think they do a great job. I was thankful that Daisy Edgar Jones actually got a bit more to do as the series went on. I was a bit skeptical of seeing that in the beginning, where she's basically dead, and in some flashbacks as the earnest wife character, she actually gets a few scenes towards the end where she gets to, act.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think I wish we got a little bit more Daisy Edgar Jones in this, but I'm glad she continues to be in good stuff. It's good sign
Mhm.
for her. And you mentioned Gil Birmingham as Detective Bill Taba, and yeah, that moment. I think it's like episode 4, maybe it's 3 or 4, when Garfield's character, Detective Peer, tells the news that he believes that it is fundamentalist LDS people who were connected with this, and uh, Taba comes in and just tells him how proud he is, and I just thought that was like such a nice moment between them, and really
Hmm.
like builds their relationship. And there's a lot of sweet moments between them. You really believe in their bond. But there's just so many little moments like that that I think are so thoughtfully done. Like when they're talking to the Lows, and
Yep.
Taba is like, so you just told a woman who was being abused to just try harder, and then he's like, you don't talk to my wife in this household that way. I am the cross bearer, and I just was like, and he just kind of like steps back, is like, Jesus Christ, like, but
Yeah.
I think it's just a really like
Utah still has child protective services.
right. It's honestly the like he is like the uh, audience avatar in a sense in this,
Hmm.
and I think Garfield is too with the emotional weight. Um, but I really thought that I thought that was really done well. And you talked about the writing. I think the one thing that the writing did really impressively in kind of exposing how just like horrible some of these beliefs and practices are is you start the series with this gruesome murder of a child, and that kind of looms over the whole show. And somehow the more that they go into these fundamentalist ideas that are rooted in some really harmful, I guess I'll put it that way, harmful ideas.
Mm.
So talking about like child brides and having
Yeah.
sister wives, things like that. It's just it's amazing that they were able to take you from a child murder that's that gruesome and somehow still make your stomach turn further and further as they
Yeah.
expose more and more of the case. Just really well done, and I think it probably also helps that it comes from a well-known writer like Krakauer, who you just know. I
Right.
haven't read the book, but you know that this is a well-written book.
Well, and a lot of credit is due to Dustin Lance Black for creating this series and adapting the
Yes.
Krakauer book, because Black is also coming from the Mormon world as a former LDS himself, and he knows what he's talking about. He's seen a lot of this up close as a gay man who
Mhm.
was driven to suicidal thoughts during his time in the church, and I really like how the show shows you the negatives of both sides. It does a good job of separating that they're, just Mormon people that just happen to
Mhm.
be a bit more conservative, which is totally fine, more or less. And there's also these fucked up fundamentalist types that are definitely fringe and viewed that way, but they're not as far removed as people like to think they are. They certainly weren't in the past. And there's just a lot of custom and beliefs about things like gender roles and tradition, and of course, more obvious things like race that and sexual orientation that are just not really tolerable. And I think the show handles everything in a really good way, because I think it really builds the things, and the way you have Pyrie and Taba representing two very different figures in this world uh, really take you through, and I think in a meaningful way. I saw some fun theorizing about people on Twitter from people after the show ended. Do you think that Jeb is gonna like stick it out for his kids, because his wife's clearly like still in it, and she basically threatens to leave him for another devout man if he was to not really be Mormon anymore? So, what do you think? Do you think Jeb sticks it out, or can he just not do it anymore?
Oh,
Yeah, tough,
that's
right?
tough. Yeah.
Important to know,
Um,
Jeb is not is a fictional character for the sake of the series, whereas the Laffertys are real, so it's
yeah.
completely fictional. But yeah, do you think Jeb would stick it out?
I think based on the fact that he like postponed the baptism and all that, I think he was already like kind of questioning his faith within LDS,
Oh,
and
oh,
so
he's questioned it. He
yeah,
doesn't believe it anymore. We know that. But will
right.
he like suck
I
it up for the sake of his marriage and his kids?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that that is the one thing throughout the show is that he really does love his family, and so I think he probably would, but I think he would definitely like put himself at an arm's length, so to speak, or as much of a distance as he can, and still be in the community because, like you said, he is questioned and he's done. So I think so. What do you think, though?
Yeah, I think so. It's the '80s when this is taking place, so I feel like it's not as easy to the fate or to remove yourself and still keep those connections, probably. So yeah, I think he'll probably stick it out with his fingers crossed, basically. But
Brutal.
uh yeah, I think the show does a good job that it's actually interesting thought experiment for a completely fictional character thrust into a otherwise a historical fiction show. So or
Yeah.
historical adaptation. So
It's probably worth noting that Garfield has said that he's going to take a break from performing for a while. So I don't know if he had anything else that was planning to come out, but I think this is the last time we're probably going to see him for a little bit. But I mean, what a run he's been on here to kind of take a little break off of. I think people are definitely going to be wanting him to take a lot of roles, which is great. Just seeing here if he has any movies coming out. Doesn't have
there's nothing
anything on the
currently
docket.
in production, so it does look like he's set up to definitely take off as much time as he wants. Now, whether that means he takes off just a year or a few years, like Michael Fassbender did, who can say? But he's definitely earned it because I think he's had an awesome past few years between this and his movie roles.
100%. So good for him. Take all the time you need. We'll gladly welcome you when you come back. But check out Under the Banner of Heaven. I think a really nice addition to the Hulu library. But we're gonna finish up now, talking about The Boys season 3.
Back
Dave,
in town.
give me your quick feelings on the first 2 seasons of The Boys.
Yes, I think The Boys on Amazon Prime Video is very enjoyable because it's a not necessarily nuanced, but very obvious and enjoyable satire of superheroes and superhero culture, which is so dominating in today's pop culture landscape. And it's really fun to see all of that lampooned in such a manner that they do it on The Boys. I think The Boys also brings a lot of kind of modern, like societal comment into things. The comic adaptation was more reflective of the Bush years. The Boys on Amazon is obviously grounded in the Trump sensibilities of the world and just our modern times in general. So it does a really good job of bringing superhero comment, societal comment, and also really visceral R-rated action, more adult fare at the very least, right? So it's a really good job of world building, I have to say, but it makes you think, I think, a lot more than really any other superhero stuff does. So for that, I'm just willing to give it more rope when it might spin its wheels here and there, just because it's at least trying to do something a bit different than everything else.
Yeah, I think it's a bit reductive to say it's like a grittier look at the superhero culture. It definitely explores aspects of what it would be like to have superheroes in real life that I don't think many people actually consider when they put themselves into these Marvel or DC worlds. And DC is leaned more into the gritty aspect of the underbelly of those worlds. But I mean, the way that this explores sexuality within superheroes, the way it explores what their powers could do to just average people on the street, and the way that these powers would corrupt someone psychologically and impact someone psychologically are just really, really well done. And of course, you have some awesome performances led by Anthony Starr as Homelander, who is just as Homelander is just perfectly cast and so maniacal and so hateable, but also kind of entrancing. When he's on screen, he's just someone that you just can't take your eyes off of. Even when he's in the background, he's just always looming. And I think that's the thing the show has done so well in setting him up as a character is he just hangs over every aspect of this show. And so season 3 starts, and he's had a bit of a fall from grace. His relationship with Stormfront, obviously, who's outed as a Nazi,
literal Nazi from the 40s.
Nazi, yeah, is a huge hit to his
scores,
celebrity,
his ratings at
his celebrity scores. But it sets him up, like you talked about, that Trump real world based political atmosphere, to have this incredible turn in the second episode after Stormfront's suicide that I think sets up the true conflict for the rest of this season, where Homelander is just who has been kind of muzzled by having to or this desire to be popular and to be liked and to be what he feels like he has to be as a celebrity, now just being like, fuck it, I'm just going to be who I am and people love it anyway. So I'm just going to be as the awful, shitty, superhuman I am. And that is just completely terrifying. And actually, as I talk about it, you even get like a little sense of like anxiety, because there's so many characters on this show that you like and you want to see succeed, and you're really sucked into the story, and it just feels like I have no idea where this is going to go this season. And so I'm all in on season 3 of The Boys. What did you think of these first 3 episodes?
Yeah, I think, as you said, that ending episode 2 monologue from Homelander, where, and it's an epiphany for his character, as you said, he realizes that he can just play into the rhetoric and the dog whistles that he would like to do anyway, and find his audience playing to his base. They literally say it from at Vought. Like, it's scary to see that kind of representation of society and celebrity on the show, but it also makes so much sense for where we've been with this character to this point, and the really frustrating but believable and sensical portrayal of like corporatism in terms of how Vought operates and what drives their decisions. It all is so familiar and makes so much sense, but like I think it just makes the world feel so much more real. Like you said, the show in season 1 had a great hook where, like, what if the Flash ran through someone and they fucking splattered and died? It's like something you think about like that. It's like, wow. And like I think we're so much more past that, even if we're not leaving all that behind either. Where, because we're talking about like top level, like more societal things and representing real world phenomenon via The Boys. The fact that it's also like satirizing superhero culture is like so much besides the point now.
Yeah.
So I'm very much looking forward to seeing the rest of the season. I think the question, or I guess the perhaps lack of true conflict that I brought up when we talked about season 2, is that once like Homelander goes like full villain, full off tilt, the show has to move into its end game. So in that regard, I wonder how much like true stakes we will have with The Boys until we get to that point, because they can't kill Homelander until they're ending the show. So how much more do we have of the boys themselves staying out of Homelander's grasp and going back and forth? I'd like that they at least had Butcher and Homelander meet in this premiere, like face to face, sit down at the table, and that's when Homelander gives Butcher the Temp V files, the 3 of them, and it's like they at least put it out in the open that like Homelander at any moment could just slaughter everyone, and he at least is aware that he doesn't want to do that at this time. But that being said, like, what else can we see like happen from a plot perspective that'll feel meaningful? Like, I think Huey does a good job too of saying like everything feels hopeless and I can't do it the right way. Like, it's all rigged. This senator I've been working for, turns out she's in on it too and is a soup and connected to the Vought, blah blah blah. So we have to go back to what we were doing. It's like, okay, they're going to go back to what they were doing in season 1, but we have no reason to expect it to be any more successful, because The Boys is a successful show, and thus Homelander's going to keep being Homelander, right? So that's my one kind of hang up that's like in the back of my head. But I also don't mind it that much, because it's just such a fun world to be in, and Homelander really just makes some real anxious feelings in you when you watch him, because it's just such a fully realized villain, but also multifaceted.
Yeah. So my one thought would be that if they wanted to go the route of killing Homelander, the way that they could keep the show going would be kind of setting him up as like the Trump character who is going to like awaken this like these bad actors throughout the country, and then have it kind of like these other people like take up this persona, and like how they're going to try to like combat that. If they would really be leaning into like current political discourse, which I don't know if the show wants to fully go there, but they did introduce Nazi idealism into like the a person who embodies the United States in the show. So it's not shying away from current
there's
political
obvious Charlottesville iconography with the Stormfront
Yes.
supporters that we see in season 3 on like video footage. So they don't really run away from anything, and they don't really care if the parallels are super obvious either, because as long as it, I think, makes sense for the world building in the show, then it's all good. Yeah, and no, I think that's right. You know, what does Homelander running off to chill in Florida look like though on the show? Like, what is that actually? You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would. I think it would have to be like Homelander is, you know, whatever this weapon that they're finding actually works on him, and that he still is like a figure, but not as powerful in some way. I just don't know what's going to come, but I am really fascinated to see the flashbacks. You know, we see a flashback to Mallory there. What's her name?
Nicaragua, like Contra stuff, I think it was.
And you know, you get young Vought there, Edgar from Vought, who's overseeing these initial like soups in the army, and Payback. Just like the debacle that was so well done and gruesome, which, you know, I think the show really does a good job of showing the potential gruesome side of this world as sort of reality. And I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing a little bit more from that. I think the Soldier Boy, which also just makes me laugh every time they talk about it, because it's hard to not just think of Soldier Boy. You know, that. But I think that's really fascinating and like an interesting aspect to the show, is looking backwards a little bit more. So I'm hoping to get something out of that. And I also think they do a really good job of setting up the position that Starlight is in. You know, like I really feel for her, and I think Erin Moriarty does a really great job playing her. And I'm very fascinated to see where this like on-screen romance that she's leaning into at the end of episode 3 is going to go with Homelander. It feels, you know, like really tiptoeing a fine line. I'm very worried for her at this point.
Yeah, I agree, and I think down the line too, they're doing a good job of logically kind of setting up the ticking time bomb that is Homelander's son via Butcher's wife. Wouldn't be shocked to see him kind of become like an Anakin Skywalker falls to Darth Vader type thing. You know, Kylo Ren. Like maybe that is where we go, where he briefly breaks like super bad and becomes an antagonist, you know? Not sure. I really enjoy Victoria Newman so far, who we got a bit in season 2, as she's the congresswoman who's in on it with Vought. The whole Nadia. Vought, adopting stuff from Super Soup's kids. Another awesome, I think, world building moment that makes sense for the boys. What if there were superpowered kids that killed their parents before they had any control? What happens to them? It's like, wow, yeah, I never thought about it like that. Along those lines, really excited to see that Vought spin-off series about superhero college kids, which is actually in production right now after a long development. There's just so much to play in with this world, even if I might have fears about the main conflict growing stagnant. There's just so much, I think, going on in the world, and all the performances are really enjoyable, that I do hope they just kind of just run this out for a while, because it's just really fun to be with these characters.
Yeah, definitely. You know, just one aspect I wanted to touch on that I'm having a really, really tough time with pretty much every time they're on screen this season is the Aquaman person.
The Deep.
Yeah, the Deep. Obviously, getting Chase Crawford back is nice. I think he's a talented actor, but his character, obviously problematic from things from earlier seasons, you know, the sexual assault of Starlight in season 1, but him having to eat Timothy in episode 3 was literally, I literally had to skip through the scene, dude. Like, it was so hard to watch.
CG octopus.
Yes, and yeah, obviously I'm being a big baby with that, but it was just so heartbreaking to see him have to eat his friend. Yeah, just really, really devastating. I hope we get Timothy back in some way, but I highly doubt it. That was a brutal scene.
Yeah. I'm curious to see where they take A Train, because A Train feels a bit stagnant, where it's like he medically like can't really be his old self in terms of like being the Flash,
Hmm.
and personally, culturally, he's basically called out by those who know him as like, you're not really putting on for the black community. You're just a self-centered person. So what's your deal, bro? And
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're left with. So TBD there, I suppose. Um, I think the one through line that I didn't really care for early on was like Frenchie's side plots where he like gets up to like random mischief away from the rest of the boys. It's like I feel like I don't necessarily need this.
Yeah.
I don't mind Kimiko per se, but like when Frenchie's like off like with his other acquaintances and like getting roughed up by like European mobsters or something, it's like, what's the point of this? Like,
Yeah, I agree. I don't know where that's going, but don't really want more of that. We'll see. Um, yeah, man, this show is great, and I hope people watch it. And if you like superheroes at all, I think it's worth the watch, at least for the thoughtfulness of it, because it definitely makes you consider things that you haven't before. So, any last thoughts? Are you ready to wrap it up for this week?
yeah, yeah.
Let's wrap it up. What do we got for next week, Dave?
The Jurassic World Dominion, Jurassic World 3, one of the biggest movies of the year, almost assuredly. So we'll get that. Colin Trevorrow back. The end of Barry season 3. The start of Miss Marvel. Marvel, Disney Plus, Miss Marvel, and Obi-Wan the same day for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And then also on Apple, the start of For All Mankind, season 3, one of the breakout Apple series in its second season.
Hell yeah. Love that show. Definitely catch up on those things before we talk about them next week if you haven't had the chance. And give us that follow, youtube.com/nostalgiapod. We'll catch you next week.